What?
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
What?
I got 2 words for you.
4 minutes, The Rock says, know your role.
Is having a fight. All-star wrestling, why that's for me. A super destroyer is on TV. He's got brute strength and all the moves. He's number 1, go spread the news. Tell Jesse the body and all the rest. He's the greatest, he's the best. A super destroyer Mark II. Stand back and watch what he can do. A super destroyer.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to episode 33 of the Middle-Aged Outlaws podcast. I'm Ross, I'm here with my co-host Adam as always. And today we're going to be talking about not the first ever King of the Ring, Adam, but the first ever televised King of the Ring.
Yeah.
How's it going?
It's going alright. Just about recovered from COVID. I'm on the road to recovery. So yeah, it's going okay. You?
Yeah, good, thank you. I had a little week off in Tenerife, and in that space of time I managed to decide I no longer wanted us to talk about TNA, whatever it was. Sacrifice, was it? What we were going
I think that's
about?
right. Yeah.
And impulsively decided I wanted to do King of the Ring 93 instead. So if you've tuned in to hear us talk about the Texas death match between those two guys that we've never heard of, then just switch it back off, because we're probably just going to run down Hulk Hogan for an hour or so again. So yeah, all good. Do you want to hear about June 1993?
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we get started, there's no great ones this week, but here we are. King of the Ring 1993, which took place in June 1993. As we said before, this was the first ever televised King of the Ring and became part of the big what was initially the Big Four: Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, Survivor Series, turned to the Big Five for a number of years before they then dumped the King of the Ring idea again for what reason I don't know, but always been a fan of it myself. What about you?
Yeah, I liked it as a pay-per-view, and I liked, it would usually be an indicator of who's about to get a decent push, and I liked that. I think they sort of reverted to doing it on the TV shows for a while, which I've not really followed. I know that there's been some winners that absolutely did signpost that push to come, and some that maybe fell a little bit flat in comparison. But I was enthusiastic to watch this because I had quite fond memories of this one.
Yeah, me too. What was I going to say? I cannot remember, so no bother saying it. I'm totally lost.
Were you about to debate whether Mabel or Billy Gunn were the greatest ever King of the Rings?
No.
No. Okay.
No, it wasn't. Who was the first ever King of the Ring?
Was it?
Harley
I
Race?
think it might have been Harley Race, yeah.
There might be somebody before that.
And I think they used it, I'm not sure if they used the tournament storyline or the fact that if you beat the king, you could become the king, when they were doing Randy Savage turning heel and becoming the Macho King.
Nice.
So yeah, there's storylines relating to the King of the Ring before it was ever really a pay-per-view.
But when I was on holiday, I was reading a really good book called The Death of the Territories by Tim Hornbaker. And in there, they talked about Vince basically invading every available territory. And the Harley Race was King Harley Race at the time. They were trying to get into Memphis, and it just fell flat on its face because the king in Memphis was Jerry Lawler. So just a little interesting tidbit for you there, Adam.
Yeah, it sounds from everything you've said like it was a very good read, that book.
Yes, I would recommend that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so June 1993, I've got a couple of famous births. Your boy, Cooper Kupp.
Oh, nice.
Wide receiver for the Los Angeles Rams. And your girl, Ariana Grande.
Really? I thought she would be younger than that.
What age would 1993 be?
1993, somebody would be...
In their 30s?
They'd be, late 20s right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
And really the only other big thing, and Mean Gene Okerlund does allude to it during the pay-per-view, Jurassic Park was released in June 1993.
Amazing. So that would be, well, whenever it came to the UK cinemas would be when I discovered I was allergic to Pepsi.
Jolly Rancher.
Well, we throw Jolly Ranchers into the mix because they were involved on the day, but you know, they may just have been totally innocent, and because there's definitely two situations where the throat swelled up quite a lot when Pepsi was involved.
You've got Coke and Pepsi. Coke is the winner.
Well, I mean, in fairness, I've just avoided Pepsi for decades now, but I could probably drink it now and be absolutely fine, so I imagine what's in it's changed a lot over the years.
True, that's very true. UK number 1 in June 93. Are we going to guess? Are you going to have a wee punt?
93? I wouldn't even know where to start, I don't think.
Okay. It is I Can't Help Falling in Love with You by UB40.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And in America, I don't know the song. It's That's the Way Love Goes by...
I don't recognise that at all.
Janet Jackson.
Okay. Like, I was thinking 93 we're a wee bit too early for like Britpop and things like that to have taken over. And probably equally a bit too early for the massive boy and girl band success. So yeah, I was a bit lost with that year, thinking what could that be?
Suggesting that UB40 weren't a boy band.
Well, just an extremely talented
reggae pop band. Yep, reggae influenced. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Okay.
Sometimes they're just not that interesting, Adam. But Jurassic Park's always a winner.
Oh yeah,
I mean, what they've bastardised it into these days.
When I finally got to see it in full, you know, rather than having to leave the cinema, one of my favourite films of all time.
Which says a lot, considering your throat was swelling up the first time you saw it. I think
you
scarred for life.
Like some sort of post-traumatic stress disorder watching that now. But I just love it. Brilliant film.
Class. Well, that leads us nicely on to the Nutter Centre in Dayton, Ohio, or as they keep referring to it, what do they call it, the Heart of America or something like that?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
They seem to not be wanting to slip in that they're actually in somewhere that's not like New York or one of the bigger places.
Yeah, it's interesting that. I think, I mean, I don't know if business was necessarily booming right now at this point in time, although there's some good stuff in here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Do you think you would have watched this? Or not watched it, but I've seen it as a young
Yeah, I had it on VHS. So I think back in those days, like I'd collected as many of the big shows like the WrestleManias, Royal Rumbles, SummerSlams as I could get, and then just noticed that there was this new show, this different show. So I definitely had this on VHS, and I think I really enjoyed it when I watched it as a kid. There's plenty of good wrestling in here, but there's also, I was it might be surprising to hear it now, but I was a Hogan fan as a kid. You like seeing Hulk Hogan on any big show. You expect to see him on any big show. But I was definitely also a Bret Hart guy when I was young, because he always just seemed really cool in that tag team, and then they broke him off to become the singles star. So I was pretty much a fan of his from the start. Yep.
I was pretty much the same myself, and I think I'm the same as you. I feel like I've seen this a lot.
Yeah.
I was looking across Yokozuna's career in WWF, and to me, it felt like he must have been there for about 10 years. And I was reflecting on this and thinking it's probably because I've watched the same videos over and over again that many times. Because I really don't even remember watching WrestleMania 10 as a kid, but I must have watched WrestleMania IX about 1 million times. I think the same as this King of the Ring. So
yeah, I wonder how long his run actually was in WWE, because I think he went away for a little while, not to another company, but I think basically taken off screen for a little while.
They wanted him to lose weight, and they sent him away to lose weight, and he kept coming back, having put on more weight. I think around about 96.
Okay.
Or through 96. It's a shame. We'll get into it.
Yeah.
Commentary team here is quite an unorthodox trio, the same trio that we had at WrestleMania IX, which we've not discussed, but I think I'm on record as saying it's one of my favourite WrestleManias. I'm also on record as saying it's probably one of the worst WrestleManias. But the commentary team here, JR, Bobby the Brain Heenan, and the Macho Man Randy Savage. I think at this point Vince had decided that Savage was done and wanted to put him in the commentary team.
Yeah.
One of his crazy harebrained schemes that he comes up with.
It's a funny mix, because I know he was on, he was one of the announcers in the early days of Raw, when Raw was launched, but I think it was like him, Vince, and someone else that were the pairing. I don't know if this particular combination of this trio would have done many shows together.
I think this was it.
Yeah.
JR disappeared again after this.
Right, okay. It doesn't work all that well, which we've kind of discussed offline, especially some of the Bobby Heenan stuff. So it's probably understandable Vince maybe would have listened in and thought, yeah, maybe not the best combination. And
I had a wee look through just the 1993 Raws, because Raw only started in 1993, I think.
Yeah.
I had a wee look through the Raws, and Savage is taking on Yokozuna for the title not that long after this on an episode of Raw, so he's obviously back in the ring. Not too much longer after this.
Yeah.
It doesn't bring much to the table at all as far as the commentary is concerned. In fact, he takes away from it a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's a shame, because as a wrestler, he's so charismatic, and it just doesn't come across very well here at all.
No, not at all. We kick off with one of our King of the Ring. What would this be? Quarterfinals.
Yeah.
And what a match to start off with. Razor Ramon versus Bret the Hitman Hart.
Yeah.
And right from that off, the Mankind car, it's like a car crash sort of sound effect that starts off. Razor Ramon's music, the music, coming out, just an amazing way to start. Just takes you, transports you right back to childhood, I think.
Oh yeah, he was. I think when we've discussed him before, he was a big favourite of both of ours. And this is just one of those matches that you see and you want to see. And I know they have more matches in future. So they maybe have a world title match a year down the line from this. It might be at the next King of the Ring.
Royal Rumble.
Is it? Okay.
It's either Royal Rumble I was going to say 93. Would that make sense? Yeah, because Bret was champion then. I think it's Royal Rumble 93.
Yeah, okay.
Same year Yokozuna wins it, goes on to WrestleMania IX to face each other. That's what happens.
Yeah. So we know that they've had headline matches together. I've got it in my mind they work together quite a lot. That might just be me thinking of all the pay-per-views that, like you mentioned earlier, I've watched over and over again. And maybe it was only 2 or 3, but it seems like quite a lot of times to me, and they've got a pretty good chemistry going on.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing about seeing Razor against Bret is it emphasises just how big Scott Hall is. Yeah. We spoke about him before when we were watching WCW, and he seemed like he had everything. He looks massive. Yeah, and the other thing is, I suppose, are we about to head into steroid trial? Are we? I think we're past. I think that's the reason they put the title on Bret and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Because not only does Scott Hall, he looks amazing, but he looks natural as well. So in terms of big guys, muscular performers, he doesn't look outlandish or cartoonish. He just looks like a big guy.
Like a beast. Right. pretty much immediately start this match, we see the difference in styles. We've got big powerful guy and the technical wrestler. And, Bret, although he's getting overpowered, he continues to use his technique to focus on Razor's arm to start off with. He's getting taken down, but he's holding on to something, and holding on to the arm, which is what we come to expect for watching Bret, but it's still class to watch.
Did you notice the crowd chants of 1, 2, 3 Kid? Yeah. So I think that they're there at the start, and then it kind of comes into play as the match is going, because it's like you laid out, Bret's got the quickness and the wrestling moves and all that, whereas Razor's that bit more powerful. We've got Bret hitting his shoulder on the ring post, and Razor, properly going after the shoulder at that point. He starts getting distracted by the crowd chanting 1, 2, 3 Kid, which is good, because he's playing the heel here, and you probably would have a go at the crowd and get rattled by that kind of thing. Just some sort of, there's obviously a story on the go there, and I remember when I've watched some old Raws and things like that, actually going back and watching the one where 1, 2, 3 Kid gets the big shock win over Razor Ramon, and them basically really rolling with the angle of how much that got in Razor's head. Yep. So it's a good thing when you know the crowd are going to do it, because it's the storyline on the go at the time. It's a good way to play into that heel angle. I thought that was it's a slight sidebar, but I thought that 1, 2, 3 Kid Razor story was really good, in terms of a way of getting somebody over and really letting the story play out rather than rushing things through and things like that.
It's crazy when you go back and watch it, how young Shawn Waltman looks.
Yeah,
I've no idea how old he is now versus how old he was then. I thought he looks so young. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Some of the again, like, we get some of the classic moves that both of these guys like to use. Razor has a lovely fall-away. Is it a fall-away slam?
Yeah, that's what I've got written. I think that's what they call it, the commentary team.
Brilliant. And he's kind of on top for a little bit of this, and it's a bit of a story throughout this show that Bret's basically getting beaten down, but comes back. He's a kind of almost an underdog in each of these matches. Yeah. We see a lot of classic Bret here: Russian leg sweep, the backbreaker, the inverted atomic drop, which people never use anymore. It's an amazing move. Yeah. The flying elbow from the second rope. And just other thing I was going to mention there was that heard or read, can't remember which, that Bret had been told never to use the sharpshooter with any of these matches.
I don't know.
Pat Patterson had apparently told him not to use the sharpshooter for any of these matches, and I think it's in this match that Razor starts stamping on his fingers.
Yeah, that's right.
Stamping on his hands, and I think that's the whole, he won't be able to get the sharpshooter on, because he's done that, which is storytelling.
Yeah.
I enjoyed this. It's a good way to start. I think I just wish this maybe meant more, or it was for a bell, or like you say there, if there was somewhere down the line where they went again, I'd like to see it. Yeah,
it's a good match. It's very well laid out, very well executed. I always thought with Bret, they refer to him, or they've always referred to him as a smaller guy. I'm sure in normal life terms he's anything but a small guy, but compared to some of the guys he's in there with, I always thought that it was never unbelievable that he would beat anyone, which given the size difference in some matches is something to achieve, because he looks so good at everything he's executing and things like that. He can work as the underdog, but do it always looking like a threat to win the match, which I don't know that many smaller guys, I suppose Shawn Michaels would be an obvious other one, but not that many have maybe been all that convincing doing it. You sort of walk away at times thinking, well, stupid as it sounds, if this was real, that guy's destroying that guy. You know, there's no contest there, but somehow Bret always made it believable.
Mm-hmm. Oh, aye, 100%. And you see that from the way that, like, I think, you know, across this pay-per-view, you see the way that he wrestles. You can see that these stories about Stu Hart's dungeon and all that, he can do these moves for real, as far as holding and that sort of thing are concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Finish to this match, I think we get, it's kind of abruptly appears from nowhere sort of thing. Razor's going for a back suplex for the top rope, and Bret sort of pulls himself round, lands on top of him and gets a quick 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
And that's us. That's Bret through after, you know, that's a difficult first match, and to be seeing Bret 3 times, it's a shame not to see Razor Ramon again, but a good start.
Yep.
After that, we see some footage, I think, from Superstars. I don't really understand the significance of showing this, but we see Mr. Hughes attacking The Undertaker and Paul Bearer, and he steals the urn from them. And yeah, I don't really get the significance of showing that, because I assumed The Undertaker was going to get involved in this match. Yeah,
I didn't know if it was purely because of how they execute the finish, because the urn comes into play
that makes
in
sense.
the finish, but it does seem like quite a... They surely didn't just do it for that, but I know Mr. Hughes and Giant Gonzalez had the same manager, Harvey Whippleman, yeah. So they've obviously, I assume on TV, had an alliance on the go. But yeah, it seemed like quite a lot to show just to make it clear why they had the urn when they came down to ringside.
It kind of made me think, all right, The Undertaker's not on this pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What an odd trio that is, eh? Mr. Hughes, Giant Gonzalez, and Harvey Whippleman. What do you think of Mr. Hughes?
I mean, he's a big guy. I was never impressed by him from what I remember. He didn't show me much here, to be honest.
It only occurred to me about 3/4 of the way through this match that his shades were still on. I was pretty impressed with that. And, I mean, if I was tearing about like that and I was that size in a shirt and tie shirt and suspenders and trousers, I think I'd be sweating my ass off, but it looked pretty good.
I mean, yeah, he's in terms of the way he was dressed, you know, immaculate. But I was quite surprised. I was watching this going in a little bit cold. I didn't realise that Mr. Perfect, we were in an era where he was a babyface.
Nah, same. How odd is that to hear him getting cheered?
I know, and I know it can only have lasted so long. I think by this point he'll have had the match where he basically was at a loser leaves WWE match against Ric Flair, which is basically the storyline explanation for Flair being released and allowed to go back to WCW. And I imagine he's probably been babyface ever since he turned on Flair and aligned with Savage. But it is strange. He's supposed to be a heel.
Aye, it's Mr. Perfect.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be arrogant and aye. So this is our second King of the Ring quarterfinal. Yeah. Mr. Hughes with Harvey Whippleman versus Mr. Perfect. And like you say, did a huge pop for Perfect. It's just so odd. Did you notice this? He comes in the ring and he throws his towel behind. You know, he does this sort of throw behind the back of his towel, and it lands perfectly on Mr. Hughes' shoulder.
Yep, I did.
How good is that?
Yep.
You couldn't have planned that. Looked absolutely amazing. Probably the best thing in this match, to be fair.
Yeah, I felt like the entire match, Mr. Hughes was kind of just going for like rest holds and stuff like that. I think there was there was one big boot that I put in my notes that looked like it could have taken Mr. Perfect's head off.
I've got the same note, yep. I thought he looked fast coming off the ropes.
Yeah,
but, yeah. Do you know, this was the match where I realised, I think I've written it down here, I've brains coming out with some weird one-liners. And it's later down the line I realise it's JR not selling these one-liners that's kind of taken away from it. And something that it's kind of the way that JR's commentating. He's doing that sort of, I think you've mentioned it before when we've been talking about it, it's kind of like presenting it as a real sports event. He's talking about Mr. Hughes. I think he's talking about him being an American football player in college or something like that. Meanwhile, this guy's in the ring wearing shades and fucking suspenders and that, looking like a bodyguard, and it's like, it just doesn't, that's where it doesn't mesh at all. It's interesting.
It doesn't fit. And I think I can see, you know how in WCW days when JR was there, I think most things were presented more as athletic contests. It fitted what he was talking about, but WWE here is still pretty cartoonish.
Yep.
It just doesn't fit. It's I've got to imagine that Vince has made a decision pretty quickly, given how, you know, off and on JR is in terms of the shows he covers, that he's maybe not quite getting it in terms of what he needs from him at this point. Because I'm not going to say it ruined the show. I still enjoyed the show, but I think it would have been better with a different announce team.
Aye, no, I totally agree. I've written here that Mr. Perfect's going for the Shawn Michaels at SummerSlam 2005 selling. There's times where he's just like a little bit over the top.
He is a wee bit over the top. We get there's like a little mini interview with Bret Hart during this match.
Awful.
It's so weird, and they're obviously, I think what they're doing is they're trying to lay the groundwork for making Perfect a little bit of a heel in their match between each other that's coming up. So they basically have Bret Hart asked who he would rather face of the two, and he kind of loosely indicates he'd rather face Mr. Perfect. But he says something like, because, you know, he's a wrestler and I respect him and stuff like that. Yeah. He'd rather face the wrestler than the power and all that kind of thing. But he does say it in a really respectful way, and then they will twist that down the line a little bit.
Shit, Mean Gene just stirs it right up.
He loves stirring things up. We've got Bobby Heenan saying that Bret is the 14th of 13 children.
Is this what he also says the 1, 2, 3 thing? He sets the hotel wake up call for 1, 2, 3 so he can kick out. And Savage says, that's not useful information right now. Yeah.
Yeah, they're just not selling his gags.
I think it's in this match as well that Heenan's pushing him for who's going to win. Mm-hmm. Or is it in the Bret versus Perfect? I can't remember.
Might be the Bret Perfect.
Who's going to win this whole thing? Savage says Perfect. JR says I don't know, and he says, well, you're of course you're from Oklahoma. And JR just completely no sells that and starts speaking about college credentials or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, Mr. Hughes decides he's had enough of this wrestling malarkey, picks up the iron and smashes Mr. Perfect over the head with it.
It does seem, and I've seen this a few times on other shows, that the person gets, to the end of their tether really suddenly, and it's like, I just can't do this anymore, right? I'll hit him with the iron, that's it.
Perfect goes down, DQ, Mr. Perfect goes through. So that sets us up nicely for Bret Hart versus Mr. Perfect, of course.
Yeah.
So backstage we're with that man Mean Gene Okerlund. He's with Mr. Fuji and Yokozuna. They reference, Mr. Fuji references WrestleMania IX. Says that Hulk Hogan cheated, which does not make sense at all, because it's Mr. Fuji that challenges Hulk Hogan after Yokozuna's defeated Bret Hart. But anyway, Big Yoko though, he says America will go down.
Yep. And
then shouts Banzai, which you're waiting for. But yeah, I don't remember Yokozuna speaking apart from that.
No, me neither. I always thought he didn't really, and Mr. Fuji was the mouthpiece, but he's obviously got just little bits and pieces during promos. He's such a I think Mr. Fuji actually says he's even bigger now than he was at Mania. Mm-hmm. And the size of him is absolutely terrifying in a lot of ways.
I loved Yokozuna.
Yeah, so did I as a kid. And I genuinely used to look and think, well, how actually could somebody beat him?
Yeah. It's not like a Big Show sort of scenario where they push this massive guy right to the top. Don't know what I'm trying to say. Like, I feel like Yokozuna was massive, but believably massive in this world of wrestling. You know, like, what I suppose what I'm trying to say is he moves well, and he does genuine wrestling moves, and he's not just like what Andre the Giant was like in sort of later years, where he's just punching and people are falling over, or like Big Show sort of thing where he almost became a sort of silly character. Like, Yokozuna was terrifying, and he was big and he could move.
I think that's the really terrifying thing was the way he moved, and I think that's the thing that made his sort of later years a bit sad, because he lost that. They started putting him in, tag matches and things like that, because somebody else would have to do quite a lot of the work for him. But at this stage, and from memory, I think at WrestleMania X as well, he could still move, and that makes him just look almost like unbeatable.
Yeah, I agree. Do we have a Hogan? Have I missed that here?
I think there's a Hogan promo later.
Ah, right, okay.
I think.
Okay, so we go to our next qualifying quarterfinal match for King of the Ring. I'm going to get this wrong. From Newsbury Park, New Jersey. Is that made up?
Is it Newsbury?
Maybury? Oh, whatever. Bam Bam Bigelow, the Beast from the East. Another sort of underrated favourite of ours, I think. Against that, I've got to be careful what I say, against Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Asbury Park,
is it?
Yeah, I remembered it from the ECW days, because they used to say that when he was there as well.
Nice. Right, I'm going to preface what we say about Hacksaw before we start speaking about him. I think I've seen recently that he's been going through like bad health and quite serious health conditions and all that sort of stuff. We're not talking about the actual man. Yep. Right. That said, fuck me. How annoying is this character?
Oh, I have a few things in my notes here that aren't overly complimentary. I mean, it doesn't... I know Bam Bam was also quite like freaky agile for a guy his size, but he looks a lot more agile than Duggan, which just seems strange when you look at the two of them. But Duggan, I don't know, he kind of looks out of shape. He's a big guy. He obviously is a big guy. And thing is, I remember liking him as a kid.
Of course you do. Aye, of course.
I think by now I'm even...
It's his facial expression.
I feel like he's comedy all the way through a match, regardless of what's going on. And that's annoyed me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. I think you're right. Like, especially with how Bam Bam Bigelow is. Mm-hmm. Like, Bam Bam Bigelow looks like he wants to kill the other guy.
Yeah.
And this Fanny with stupid facial expressions tearing about shouting ho, and it just doesn't mesh at all. It's really odd. It's like two different eras of wrestling.
Yeah, and I think in my mind, by this point, he just shouldn't be there anymore. And I think he probably isn't there all that much longer, because I know he, in the early Hogan WCW years, he's one of the people that he, gets a job for and stuff like that. Yeah, I finally heard it basically admitted by Bischoff on one of his podcasts that where Hogan did at times play his creative control was on guys that he got them to bring in. Right. And the story was basically about Bruce Beefcake. But
I thought you were saying Nasty Boys, but Beefcake makes sense too.
But there were a few others mentioned, and Duggan was one of them. Basically got a job because Hogan was there. So yeah, I think he's past his peak, but he's still got a good crowd reaction.
That's the thing. Like, you can imagine him going over brilliantly in house shows, sort of the older territory system, you can imagine the crowd going mad for him.
Yeah.
He's interactive, isn't he?
Uh-huh.
To sit and watch on the telly, now, as a nearly 40-year-old man, I'm just like, shut up.
Yeah, it was the same. Yeah, it made me not enjoy the match at all, because I just wanted it to be over and I wanted to move on.
And that's the thing. We know that Bam Bam's going through. Let's just get this over with. I've got barely any notes apart from Christ Duggan is annoying. I think he must be Eugene's dad. And then I've got the finish. Duggan goes for the 3-point stance, misses, and Bigelow hits this amazing flying headbutt. Like this, seeing the size of him going through there, it's just amazing. It almost looks unreal.
I always thought they could have made more of Bigelow, and I think there's again, just referencing other podcasts, it might have been a Pritchard one where he sort of referenced that he was at times his own worst enemy.
Really?
In terms of what he was willing to do and things like that, and it just at times, by the sounds of it, put a little bit of a sour taste in people's mouths, and then they just kind of stopped wanting to put him in the positions.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but because I remember as a kid like being blown away by this guy, and he had this ridiculously cool look, and an absolute badass look, and the way he could move and things like that. He was one of my favourites.
Yeah, it's like he was created to appeal to a kid's sort of sense of imagination with the flames and this guy's got tattoos on his head. He's massive and he can fly through the air.
Yeah.
Before we finish with this match, what was your thoughts on the bed sheets in the crowd that said Bam Bam Bigelow?
I mean, it's the kind of thing you see and you laugh and you think, somebody's probably been so proud of themselves coming up with that. And I always think, I always wondered, when you see signs and they're like really cool and things like that have they been planted? Have the company come up with that and thought, put that there. But then you see these and you think, nah, this is somebody's best ever plan, and they've had their moment of glory by getting it seen on camera.
And here we are, nearly 30 years later, talking about it. So, mission accomplished.
Yep.
This is where we go. This is sort of like the down point of this pay-per-view. We go to the backstage and we've got the red fucking rooster, Terry Taylor, with the smoking guns and the Steiners.
What was this?
So we've got Billy and Bart. How crazy is it that Billy Gunn's still wrestling and he was on this here?
And I thought the guns seemed so wooden, like both of them. And I don't know that Bart ever quite got past that. But, you think about Billy when he had Road Dogg next to him. Anything but wooden. But at this, I found this all just really awkward.
Aye. Well, it was Terry Taylor. He's awful. I don't know why they decided to make him there. Maybe Sean Mooney had something else to do that day or something. But I've got here 3 god-awful promos by the Smoking Guns, and Scott Steiner's just he doesn't bring up any mathematics at least, but he's all over the place. But then they give the mic to Rick Steiner, and you're just like, yes, just do that, because he was cool. He started barking and shouting and all that.
I was listening to Jeff Jarrett's podcast earlier today. It sounds like all I do is listen to podcasts, but working from home, that's just what you do. And he was talking about the Steiners, and he was talking specifically at a point about Scott Steiner and the maths and the odds of winning promo, which it's just it's this really weird. It's really funny, but you just wouldn't expect it to come from him. It got me. It really did get me, and I don't know that I'd ever heard it before. But they played it. They played pretty much all of it, I think. And apparently Jarrett had been asked, do you want to know what's going to be in Scott Steiner's promo? And he was like, no, it's fine. Just let him do it. And he said of all the things that he imagined it could have been, that was just nowhere near his thinking. But he thought it was brilliant as well.
That's class.
Yeah.
Did they say if it was scripted, or did they say that was all Scott Steiner?
So it was all Scott Steiner, and apparently he used to do these random things at times when they were just driving from town to town.
Love that. Love
Just
hearing stuff like that.
Sitting in the car, he would just come out with these things, but he said he'd never quite heard him come out with anything like that before. But yeah, as far as he's aware, it was all his own work.
Brilliant. That's class. So the Smoking Guns and the Steiners are set to take on the Head Shrinkers and Money Inc. later on in this pay-per-view. We'll talk about that then. But yeah, you don't need to get promos for everybody.
No.
Our next quarter-final match, the final one, final quarter-final match for the King of the Ring is the Narcissist Lex Luger taking on Tatanka. I was not looking forward to this match, Adam, but I actually quite enjoyed it.
I've never really been a Luger guy. I could enjoy Tatanka, but I thought he was fine. He's got a really weird physical shape to him, Tatanka. It's like, looks in good shape, but he's like incredibly, I don't know, is the right word thick?
Thick's the word I would use as well, yep.
Yeah. Every time I see him, I'm like, it almost takes me by surprise. But they talk up the fact they're both undefeated.
Yes.
Which is obviously adding
bit of foreshadowing there.
Yeah.
Where this is going.
And I think they're both guys that they're trying to protect to some extent. Yeah. I know we talked about this before, but I don't think we're all that far away from Lex Luger's babyface turn with the slamming Yokozuna on the boat, and then ending up getting in the title picture and on his bus touring around all the towns and things like that. Yeah,
it's quite odd how he goes. I think it was about 3 episodes of Raw after this pay-per-view where it was the Body Slam Challenge.
Right.
It's quite odd how it goes from this guy that's in love with himself in the mirror to going to Mr. America all in red, blue and white, but obviously that coincides with Hogan leaving and all that sort of stuff. But I quite like this version of Luger. I like the whole titanium plate in his arm thing, which I think was a real thing that actually happened to him.
All right,
I think he'd been in a motorbike accident, and he had a steel plate put in his arm, and they'd obviously used it as part of his gimmick, which I quite liked, and I like that as that sort of way of taking down Yokozuna, which is what they used. So they make a big thing that the referee here is got an elbow. He's got an elbow pad for him to put on, despite it being his forearm. But they won't start the match until he wears this, and he's not happy about it at all. Luger, I don't think he's the best at the sort of character-based stuff, do you?
No. I mean, he always looked unbelievable, and I always thought he was never a babyface. He is a heel, but he's maybe best if he'd had, I think they hinted at times Bobby Heenan speaking for him, but I don't think it ever went full blown in that direction. I think if he'd had a really good heel manager with him and doing a lot of the talking for him, that probably would have helped quite a lot.
I agree with that. Cornette came in just after this period to work with Yokozuna.
Right.
Cornette worked with him.
Yeah, definitely.
I got about halfway through this match and then I realised what was going to happen.
Right.
Once I realised that they were going to the time limit draw, I suddenly realised how knackered Luger looked. About, I don't know, so it's a 15-minute, isn't it? A 15-minute time limit.
Yeah.
I think 10 to 12 minutes in, I was like, oh, he is like bright red.
Yeah. And the announcers start mentioning the time limit as well, which is usually an indicator that you might be heading towards a draw.
And given the number of matches that they're trying to fit in on this pay-per-view, like there's something we'd have to give somewhere, a double count-out, disqualification, that sort of thing. And also it plays into the story that we're being given with Bret about, like basically him going through the fire sort of thing to get into the final.
It's very similar to what they actually did for that WrestleMania title tournament that we talked about a few weeks ago, where you're stacking the deck by clearing the path for the heel. So yeah, obviously the winner of this match is slated to face Bam Bam Bigelow in the semi-finals. We're obviously heading towards a draw, which puts Bam Bam straight into the final.
So they go to the time limit draw, and then Lex grabs a microphone and does a kind of face thing where he said 5 more minutes.
Yeah,
but then he just takes the elbow pad off and smashes the tank over the head with it anyway.
Do you know, when he started talking about the 5 more minutes, I thought, is this like the start of just a little bit of a babyface turn? But no, it wasn't.
Nah, not at all. So I think I would say this is a pay-per-view. I was going to say 2 halves, but it's almost 3/3. That was kind of like the start. I'd say we go into the second, third here. We get an absolutely classic interview segment with Mean Gene, Bret Hart, and Mr. Perfect. We've spoken about this before, I think, when we were talking about Intercontinental Champions, maybe.
Yep.
I think it was that, or it was maybe a WCW pay-per-view where Kurt Hennig and Bret Hart have a match. Either way, it's a brilliant interview segment with the both of them. They're both faces, and Mean Gene, like you said, is stirring the pot as far as Bret. Didn't you say that you would like to? Didn't you say that sort of thing? Well, what I said was, and then they start talking about whose dad could have beat whose dad, which I liked.
Mean Gene, he stirs the pot at the start. Then he gets annoyed with them for bickering with each other, despite him starting it. And then he's the one that asked if their dads ever faced each other.
Yep.
He's some character, Mean Gene.
Listen, never forget what Mean Gene did to Dean Malenko.
Yeah, fair point.
Man is a piece of shit. So, yeah, we got a wrestling classic on our hands here. Bret and Mr. Perfect. First thing I noticed here, it's quite weird seeing Bret come out with no shades.
Yeah. I wondered if he would do one for every match, but he didn't. It's obviously just, I assume, match 1 where he gave away the shades.
I feel like we could probably spend a whole hour talking about this match. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. It's like heaven for us. Both these two just have absolutely perfect chemistry. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If ever you want an Iron Man match or something like that, these two would be great for it. Yeah,
I love watching both of them in terms of individual matches, but the two of them together, it's just special. You don't normally get that level of chemistry. It's obviously two guys that know what they're trying to do inside out. They're so skilled in terms of what they're trying to execute, but the way they play off each other is just brilliant. And you go into this as babyface, but Perfect. They're clever enough to have Perfect doing these little heel things during the match.
Yeah.
That just builds up that little bit of heat. Without it going too over the top. He can walk away from this, and we'll talk about that towards the end, but he can walk away from this still as a babyface. But in the actual in-ring action, he's playing just enough of a heel to get the heat.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little similar to what Bret was doing at SummerSlam 92.
Yeah.
Where he's doing these little facial expressions and playing the crowd just that little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't really know where to go with this match because there's so much in it.
Yeah. It'd be a lot to, cause I think probably because I was enjoying it so much, rather than breaking it down from move by move, I've got things like excellent sequence of holds, slams, counters, kicks, there's just so much going on. And we've got, I think there is a point where there's like things like a standing drop kick by Perfect, which just looks ridiculously smooth when he executes it. We do have little seeds of things like JR talking about how the King of the Ring winner will have to be the number 1 contender for the title. Just, underlining the sort of importance of the tournament and getting the win. I don't know if we mentioned this at the start, but I know it's been said, I don't know if it's ever been confirmed, that Bret gets this as almost like a consolation for what happened after or around and after WrestleMania 9.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're trying to keep him as a top guy without him currently having the belt or being in the title picture.
Yeah.
So I think, the more you can underline the importance of the tournament, the more it'll seem like a big triumph when he wins it. But then we'll touch on where things go from that point onwards once we get near the end.
Yeah. There's a spot in here that I don't think I watched a lot of wrestling in our time. I don't ever remember seeing this exact spot being done before and again. Perfect goes for the perfect plex with Bret's back to one of the ropes, and Bret reverses it and suplexes him out the ring.
Yeah. They
both go out the ring and Bret maintains the hold, and they're still in the sort of suplex hold position when they land on the floor. It just looks sore, but it looks amazing as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the just the skill level, the timing, everything these guys have got is just really impressive. We do get as well the mentions of what you talked about earlier, where Bret tries to lock in the sharpshooter. Perfect grabs the fingers that Bret has had stamped on previously, and they're taped up, and the announcers have mentioned that they're taped up, and it's just keeping that storyline on the go of, well, you're having to win multiple matches here in a night, and you potentially have to just find a different way of doing it, which I liked. Thought it played well into the story.
Yeah, same. And it's it's a little thing that's important as far as storytelling's concerned. It doesn't need to be a flying whatever for it to be impactful.
Yeah.
Finish to this one. Again, it's kind of like the Razor finish in that it's a reversal and a roll up. I think Perfect goes for the small package, and Bret kind of shimmies it over, reverses it and rolls it over and gets the 3.
Yeah, it was nicely executed. Perfect has, after their, I think it's at that Perfect Plex suplex spot where they go out onto the floor. Perfect's the first one back into the ring, but he's selling an injury as Bret makes his way back in. And Perfect, it seems, has maybe been faking the injury because he immediately goes for the cradle roll up, which Bret then reverses. So again, without being overly heelish, just a little hint of heel by Perfect faking injury and then trying to take advantage. But I thought they just executed the match brilliantly, and I was so excited to watch it. When I knew we were watching this, I knew they faced each other during this pay-per-view, and it just gives you that enthusiasm for watching it.
100%. It made me want to watch their match for SummerSlam 91 to compare, but I didn't because I thought I'd stick that in the back pocket in case of a future pick.
Yep.
And we get Perfect giving him, he's enraged after it, he's annoyed, but then we get the handshake.
Again, just quite well done, because he should be annoyed. He's lost. This is an opportunity for him to win this tournament. They kind of have words, but Perfect in the end offers the handshake. I just imagine that Mean Gene's furious. All his hard work has been ruined because they've shaken hands at the end of this.
Talking to Mean Gene, we go straight to him, and he's with, well, we get a camera shot of an airbrushed picture of Hulk Hogan, a really odd airbrushed picture of Hulk Hogan, which as it pans out is on the back of Jimmy Hart's blazer. We get a pretty impassioned promo from Hogan talking about everything you'd expect Hogan to be talking about. A lot of mentions of America. We're obviously in we're still in the Vince America versus the world territory as far as Yokozuna being a foreign heel, so there's a lot of mention of that. I don't remember Jimmy Hart managing Hogan.
Yeah, so it kind of started when Hogan came back to be Beefcake's partner at Mania 9.
Right.
Apparently at the time, Jimmy Hart was doing a lot of the, I think they affectionately refer to it as weed carrying, for Hogan. But he, like, in real life is doing a lot of the management responsibilities for him. He, like, books his hotels and transport and stuff like that. So they wanted to align them so that basically whatever town Hogan's going to, Jimmy Hart's going to it with him.
Right, okay.
And then, because I think he'd been with Money Inc., Jimmy Hart, up to that point. And they basically have a situation where Money Inc. turn on Jimmy Hart, and I think Beefcake and Hogan, like, save him, basically make the save. And he's been aligned with him since then. So probably just before Mania 9, he's been aligned with him. And I think he starts off aligned with him when he goes to WCW as well.
Okay, that makes sense. Cool. So yeah, halfway through the show and we're getting our title match. Don't know what that says about what's happening here as far as Hogan's concerned. Yokozuna, the title, King of the Ring. We know that this is Hogan's last match in the WWF until 2002.
Yeah, crazy. It is, when you messaged me saying that, it just seemed like such a long period of time. Yeah, it's crazy. And I noticed they mention Hogan has slimmed down to use his speed. I assume there's many reasons Hogan would have had to slim down when being spotlighted again by WWF. But I thought it was really noticeable just how slimmed down he was.
Did you? I didn't notice.
Did you not? I don't know when maybe I was remembering him from like that WrestleMania 4 when he was huge. And, you know, maybe if you watch him gradually over the years, it's not as noticeable, but I thought it was pretty clear.
That's interesting. So the plan, so depending on who you believe, depending on whether it's Bret Hart or Hulk Hogan or others, the plan was for Hogan to go film Trouble in Paradise TV show after this pay-per-view. I think the expectation was that Trouble in Paradise was going to be pretty big. I think it was from the same people that had produced Baywatch.
Yeah.
And I think they thought that Hogan was off to go be a huge star. Bret Hart was under the impression that after WrestleMania 9, Hogan had said to him, I owe you one, and I'll do the same for you. And back behind the scenes, Hogan and Bret Hart had done a photo shoot of them both grappling with the championship belt, and the plan was to set them up for a match at SummerSlam. That obviously doesn't happen because this is Hogan's last match with the WWF, like we've just said.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a really odd thing, but what it sounds like certainly from Bret's account of things, it just sounds like Vince has basically lied to them both, and it's come back to bite him on the ass a little bit.
Yeah,
it's a shame. It is a shame, but I think. So what happened? Let's talk about this match, and then we'll talk about what happened between Bret and Hulk after that. Actually, that makes sense. Okay. What did you think of this match, Hulk Hogan versus Yokozuna for the title?
I didn't hate it. I enjoyed it fine. I never, you know, I've probably, well, certainly compared to when I was a kid, I've soured on Hogan a fair bit, and you know, you kind of see. Where you hear about the playing politics and things like that, and you know, you maybe as you grow up see that he's not the best worker in the ring and things like that, and a lot of that didn't matter. To be fair, he's Hulk Hogan. Let's face it, he drew, you know, so many people to watch the business in the first place. So I tried to keep that in my memory because I was one of those people. You know, to be honest, when I was a kid, if there was a show that didn't have him on it, I probably would have been really disappointed in that. Yokozuna, like you, I was a fan of. He was so big and looked so dominant and was so agile, especially for his size. He had without having to say an awful lot, there was a charisma about him. He just had this really watchable quality about him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't hate this. I think, it's in terms of the quality of match. They've got. I've got in my notes. Yokozuna looks just very, very big, very big. I don't know. I think did they mention £500 plus here? I don't know what he really was, but obviously that's just massive. It's absolutely huge. We've got him really dominating from a power point of view as well. And, Hogan, I think, given the size of Yokozuna, is quite happy to sell for him. Certainly for chunks in the match.
Yeah, that's what I've got in my notes. I've written here that Hogan does a really good job of making Yokozuna look great.
There's a lot of selling. There's also the fact that quite a few times in the match he tries to power slam him and he can't, which again adds to, well, who can and who can beat this guy. So yeah, I quite enjoyed it. Wasn't my favourite match on the card, but for what it was, and it being the type of finish that we'll talk about when we get there, I enjoyed it for what it was. What about you?
Yeah, I'm the same. I think obviously we've just had our wrestling match, our technical wrestling match. This is an entertainment spectacle. I feel like these two, to me, are quite iconic to see together. I don't think that Yokozuna has a more iconic sort of rivalry than this, and again, that goes back to probably watching these things over and over, because they've only really faced each other twice, I think, Wrestlemania IX and for a very short period in this. But I just feel like there's something iconic about seeing the two of them in the ring together. Fairly similar to you. I quite enjoyed it, and the finish didn't really bother me that much, to be honest. I know there's a lot of backlash about the finish at the time, and people looking back on it.
I wonder if it's one of those, if it had been like 5 years later, probably nobody would have batted an eyelid. But maybe at the time, big show, people expect a clean finish for your title match or something like that, or something definitive. And maybe it came across as a little bit silly, but watching it, I didn't feel like it did. I mean, they foreshadowed it to quite an extent, because they talk right from the start about how many Asian photographers have been following Yokozuna around for days. And it was, when that was said, that was actually what triggered a memory in my mind about what was actually going to happen here, because before that, I couldn't actually remember how the match finished. So yeah, they're putting the idea out there to make it believable enough that a photographer's going to end up on the apron during this match.
Yeah, and that is well, a couple of things to mention before we go into that. Hogan normally hulks up from taking somebody's finisher, but here he sort of starts hulking up after basically taking a beating for the whole match. And Yoko kicks out the leg drop as well.
Yeah, which, they're doing a really good job of putting Yoko over, despite the slightly messy finish they go for, because, like you say, Yokozuna's finisher is protected. Hogan doesn't hulk up from that. And the fact he kicks out the leg drop, I mean, how few people must have kicked out the leg drop? So,
I can tell you, Adam.
Oh, okay.
Only up until 1993, of course. I think JR says is the first person to ever kick out of the leg drop, but Sid Justice kicked out of the leg drop at WrestleMania 8.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's still big. It's really big.
Yeah.
So for the finish, we get one of these photographers getting a little bit too, what should we say, excited and climbing up onto the apron. This guy's clearly wearing a fake beard.
Yeah.
Hogan goes over to him. Apparently Jimmy Hart goes to grab his leg, which I didn't actually notice. But that seems to be one of the big complaints about this whole thing, is that Jimmy Hart kind of ruins it by grabbing the guy's leg. A fireball comes from the camera, hits Hogan in the face. awesome leg drop from Yokozuna.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, is it JR that says the camera exploded? And then, you know, almost trying to play it off as this isn't dodgy, this is just a very unfortunate situation, but I don't know how whether anyone's buying that's actually watching and hearing that said.
So after the match, Yoko's not done. He drags him over to the corner and hits the banzai drop. And Bobby Heenan drops an absolute beauty. Hulkamania is dead.
And I'm kind of assuming from a Vince McMahon point of view here, you know he's going away to do TV. You're probably thinking he'll come back. Because, you know, he's Hulk Hogan. He'll be back at some point. So it's probably a good way of basically writing him off for a lengthy period of time. Mm-hmm. Obviously, things didn't quite pan out that way. But, it made Yokozuna look dominant.
Yeah, 100%. And apparently it was the banzai drop afterwards was Hogan's idea, apparently.
Okay.
Which seems uncharacteristic in some way. But, so yeah, we've got a brand new champion, Yokozuna, and I want to say holds the belt for quite a long time from what was this, July straight through to WrestleMania 10.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah.
So we go to the back with Mean Gene again. He's with a very cocky Alex Ferguson chewing gum-esque Shawn Michaels with his very imposing bodyguard Diesel standing behind me, and essentially Michaels uses this promo to put Diesel over. He gets a little bit mixed up talking about Mack trucks and diesel fuel and all that sort of stuff. It's interesting seeing him cutting this promo here versus him, you know, like 1998 and the DX stuff and that.
Yeah, I got what they were going for, but it wasn't a good promo. And he was a bit all over the place with it. I assume he's maybe just not quite found his character yet, and having the confidence to give his really, you know, cocky promos. He also has quite a dig at Hogan. Which I wasn't sure if what the purpose of that was.
It's quite odd, wasn't it?
I mean, you know Hogan's leaving, so there's nowhere that you can really go with that. Maybe this is where all the beef for that overselling at that SummerSlam originated from.
There you go. Aye. He describes Hogan as a dinosaur, and then he says, quite strangely, that Yokozuna gobbled him up like a Brontosaurus burger. And Mean Gene says, I think you've been watching a little too much Jurassic Park, which is also weird. How much Jurassic Park is too much Jurassic Park?
Yeah, there's no such thing. Yeah.
And I genuinely don't think they mention who Shawn Michaels is facing.
No, I don't think they do.
I didn't know until the match started. So the crowd have been pretty excited up until now, Adam. So we need them just to have a piss break.
Take them down a little bit.
Go get a drink. Calm down. So here's the Steiners and the Smoking Guns taking on Money Inc. and the Head Shrinkers. Do you know that Rick Steiner doesn't even get tagged in this match?
Really? Yeah.
How odd. This is an odd match, isn't it?
It felt just like a way of getting some guys on the card. I don't know. I didn't get the impression. I got the impression from the commentators that there'd been something between the Smoking Guns and Money Inc. And I think they talk up the Steiners wanting to now get their hands on Money Inc. and stuff like that. But yeah, it just all felt a bit nothing, really.
Money Inc. the tag champions here, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And Billy Gunn. What a waste of DiBiase on this whole thing, eh?
Yeah.
Billy Gunn actually rolls up DiBiase for the win. But then I want to say Steiners get the title shot.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, like in terms of SummerSlam, if there's a tag title match, and kind of where they're going. But I don't think Ted DiBiase's gonna be around too much longer.
Right.
I think he's basically decided from a like a family and health and all that point of view that he needs to not be on the road. And I remember the story being told, I think he'd had some issues with drink, maybe drugs, and basically, I think he basically decided that to save his marriage, he couldn't be a full-time wrestler anymore. So I think he's kind of maybe just about to be phasing himself out a little bit.
It can't be too long after this. Or saying that, we've just got Diesel being introduced. So when did NWO start? Like 95, 96?
96.
Ah, right, okay.
Yeah.
So a wee while yet before he's the third man that they keep referring to him as.
Yeah.
In NWO. This is an absolute nonsense match. I do like the head shrinkers. I like the gimmick of hitting them in the head does nothing to them. I do like that, but apart from that, this was just like, nah.
Did you ever buy the smoking guns at all?
Nah.
Nah, either. I'm sure they had a little run with the tag belts and all that,
Did
but
they really?
yeah, they just seemed like a nothing team to me.
Felt like a different era, or like a down south tag team sort of thing. If you do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, this is weird. We go to Mean Gene with Mr. Fuji, a jubilant Mr. Fuji, a happy and scary Yokozuna, and Jack Tunney.
Who seems pretty happy as well.
He does.
Yeah.
Basically, Mean Gene, because he's a Hogan mark, isn't he, Mean Gene?
Yeah. Yeah.
He's like, Jack Tunney, what have you got to say about this? Jack Tunney gives zero fucks about what happened to Hulk Hogan.
Yep.
And he congratulates Mr. Fuji and Yokozuna, and then basically it's like that thing of like cropping somebody out a picture on Instagram. The camera just sort of zooms in a wee bit and he doesn't move. And we get Mr. Fuji and Yokozuna celebrating, and I think they say something about the Prince of Japan or something like that. They're going to celebrate with him. Mean Gene questions if they're taking the belt with them to Japan, and they say no, they'll be keeping it here in America.
It's a really weird segment. I get the celebrating heels. I thought the whole Jack Tunney involvement was bizarre. I mean, quite blatantly something untoward has happened in that match, but he couldn't care less.
Nah.
Even when pushed by Mean Gene, he's just like, nah, it's fine. It's all good.
Can you imagine what J.J. Dillon would have said to that? He'd have been all over that.
But I'm so used to Jack Tunney, at any sense of foul play, holding up the belt. He did this in the Hogan Undertaker situation. He did it. He was certainly involved in it in the Hogan Andre situation. But nah, this is fine. This is fine. He's done. He's not even watching anymore. That was the impression I got.
So we go straight to the ring and we get right, that's me done. Crush's amazing entrance music.
Nice. Best thing about him.
Arguably. Yeah. So we've got, I always want to call him the Hawaiian Dream. He's absolutely not called that at all. Crush taking on Shawn Michaels with his bodyguard Diesel by his side for the Intercontinental title. And despite this being pretty bang average, I quite enjoyed it as well. Quite impressed with Crush.
He showed more agility than I thought he had. There's a couple of leapfrogs in there. There's a drop kick.
Yep.
Yeah.
The military press up and down, up and down.
There's a period of this match where he is just quite comprehensively out wrestling Michaels.
Yes.
Yeah.
A tilt-a-whirl backbreaker.
Yeah, it was surprising.
And we're putting over Diesel here as well. He's getting involved, pulling Michaels out the ring where he needs to, getting involved where he needs to when the referee's back's turned.
Yeah.
And then we get the call back to WrestleMania IX where we had the greatest wrestling match of all time, Crush versus Doink. This is at the point where it was the Doink that's actually quite a good wrestler. Mm-hmm. Is it Matt Bourne? Is that?
Yeah.
So really sinister. We get two Doinks coming out. They're both smoking cigarettes, and they start mimicking each other's movements.
Yeah.
With a view to distracting Crush.
Yeah. I liked this doink and these doinks. I think that there was definitely a point where I was watching where, he was just playing the silly, annoying clown, where I was like, nobody needs this. Nobody needs. But when it turned sinister,
yeah,
I really liked that.
Yes, and that guy could wrestle as well.
Yeah,
like genuinely wrestle. He was doing like German suplexes and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know who the other doink was?
I don't.
Skinner.
Oh, was it? Okay.
The guy that came out with him dressed as Doink.
Yeah.
There was the two of them. I don't know who the other Doink was later on.
Yeah, when it changed from being Matt Bourne.
Yeah.
And the guy could not wrestle as well as Matt Bourne.
Maybe that was Skinner, I don't know.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
So yeah, Doink distracts Crush. Michaels hits him in the back of the head with a super kick. I mean, if somebody's got a mullet like that, didn't kick it. Respect it, Shawn. Didn't expect anything from Shawn Michaels, I suppose. He gets the 1, 2, 3, and he's doing the sort of chicken shit heel sort of gimmick there, isn't he, Michaels?
Yeah. I kept, he was involved a bit through the match, but I kept assuming Diesel would be decisive to the finish, because I knew Michaels was going to keep his belt, but I didn't know going into this how the match would actually finish. But I was a little bit surprised in the end when Doink came out, because I just assumed, given they'd been starting to build this Diesel character, that he was going to be crucial to Michaels keeping his belt. But in the end, in terms of the finish, he didn't have to get involved.
Yeah, and Michaels at some point must relinquish this title. I'm just thinking about the build to ladder match at 10.
Yeah, so
I don't know what the timeline looks like.
But what happens is he legit fails a drug test, so gets sent home for a while.
Right.
They have him storyline relinquish the belt because he's been suspended. They don't say it's for drug thing, but he's been suspended for his behaviour or something like that. But apparently Vince phones him, and this is apparently the way it happened. Vince phoned him and said, "We need you to send the belt back because we're going to do a tournament to crown the new champion. You'll get your shot at the new champion." Blah blah blah, that kind of. And Michael's like, "I'm not sending the belt back. I'm not doing it." So in the end, they just get another belt, and they have the tournament. But it means that when Michaels comes back, they've got the ready-made story of, well, I never lost this belt. I've still got this belt. And Razor has won the tournament to become the new champion, which sets up that ladder match and that angle very, very nicely.
Wow. How many chances did that guy get? What an absolute dick.
I just keep thinking, imagine it was Marty Jannetty. He'd just be fired. Send the belt back on. No, I'm not doing it. All right, you're fired. Okay, we move on.
Don't bother, come back. So when did they relinquish the title to Shane Douglas as the Dean or whatever he was?
Oh, can't remember the timeline for that
Then
part.
Razor came out and beat him in like 10 seconds. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
that's a different time. That was when they got beat up by all those the bunch of guys from the forces.
Yeah, that's right.
Who's
yeah,
winding them up.
Yeah,
guy's a tick. So yeah, that was an alright match. I quite enjoyed Crush in this.
Yeah, I think when I first saw it on the card and I saw Crush, I thought, but he was better than I expected.
Do you know what's funny as well here? Savage is a big Crush fan. On commentary. And of course something must happen between them. Crush obviously turns heel between now and WrestleMania 10 because they have quite an odd Falls Count Anywhere match at WrestleMania 10, don't they?
Yeah, I think it gets kind of built on the Raws. I don't know why I remember this, but they basically, I don't know if it's after this or after, maybe after SummerSlam, not knowing who's in a program with. I assume it's still Doink at that point. He basically goes away for a while, and then they start like having him on the phone and stuff during Raws, and Savage is being all chatty with him, and he's not really giving a lot back.
Really?
And then it turns out he's basically had enough of Savage. He's had enough of his fans. They're not helping him get anywhere, and it kind of turns heel over these like little video segments.
Wow, I love that you can remember that. That's amazing.
there was a point where I went back and started watching the early Raws, and it's one of those, your eyes are bigger than your stomach moments where I thought I'll just watch all the Raws. And then I ended up watching maybe about 10. And then I thought, nah, I'll just leave it there.
The quality of the roster in about that time is crazy. And there's a lot of matches on Raw that are just like enhancement talent versus main guys to just kind of get them over, isn't there?
It's actually, in the early days, it's quite rare to have two big names facing each other on a Raw. Normally they're facing enhancement talents, and your big stars like your Undertaker or your Bret Hart, they're not on every show. They're like a couple of months, that kind of thing. It's just, and the show only lasted like 45 minutes. It's just so different to anything modern day.
It's better. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So we go to the back, and this is where I'm going to jump into my Hogan and Bret story. So apparently in between the Hogan losing the title match and the final, Bret goes to Hogan's dressing room, and in there is Jimmy Hart, Hogan, Beefcake, obviously, and Dave Hebner. And Bret has decided that he needs to confront Hogan. He says to him, I need a word. And nobody, like the rest of them don't decide to move or anything like that, they just stay. And I think basically he says to him, you told me that you owed me one. You told me that you would put me over at SummerSlam for the title. Now Vince is saying that you've said that I'm not in your league. This is what Vince has said to Bret that Hogan said. And apparently Hogan just doesn't say anything. So Bret just sort of fires on. He says, on behalf of me, my family, and most of the boys in the locker room, you can go fuck yourself. And what is it he says? He says something like, are you going to say anything? And Hogan says, I can't. And he says, why? And he says, because you've just told me to go fuck myself. That's weird, eh?
Yeah, that is weird. Like, do you think, just thinking about this and looking at this, Bret's done this on this show, so like live basically, but we're not seeing it on camera, but this is all happening like real time. Do you think Bret did not know the finish of the Hogan Yokozuna match until that point?
I don't know. That's a good point. No
because
idea.
I suppose if Hogan had retained, even though people know Hogan's going away, it would have left a window to potentially then have him drop it to Bret.
Yeah.
But the fact he's done it basically after that match makes me wonder, maybe he didn't know that Hogan would drop the belt to Yokozuna.
Yeah, maybe. Because apparently Hogan and Yokozuna went on through the house circuit for a month or two after this.
Right,
having matches.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, I think around about this time, it wasn't strange for them to change, like the belts over at house shows or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you need a camera backstage more than you do on the wrestling, I think.
Yeah.
It's just such a bizarre thing. So apparently after this, Hogan had said to Bret that Vince had said that their match at SummerSlam would be a non-title match. So Bret says he's talking nonsense. They'd went and got Vince, and Vince basically spun a lie, and Bret says that he never trusted him again after that. Ironically, this is only 1993, and yet it still goes 4 more years, and we know what happens. Yeah. But Vince basically says, I never ever said it was for the title to Bret. So he never trusted him again. So
interesting, because you hear quite a lot. It's said that Vince quite often maps things out to performers, but always with the caveat of that this could happen, and then the sort of story you hear from people like Bruce Pritchard is, well, he's mapping out a possibility, but the wrestler hears what they want to hear within that. It doesn't sound like it's that kind of situation. It's so hard to know who's not who's telling the truth, but whose account is most accurate of what happened, because I imagine there's bits and pieces of truth in all of them. It's fascinating.
It really is. and Hogan's got his own book and he's got his own account of it as well. And, like in his story, he's the hero, of course. So yeah, interesting that this is, Bret's already wrestled 2 matches, he's got another one, and this is all going on in the background as well.
Yeah.
And just to add to that, Bret went 30 plus minutes with Bob Backlund the night before in Madison Square Garden as well.
Okay.
The guy's an absolute machine.
Yeah. I remember they always talked about when he first won the belt. So it would have been when he won it from Flair at a house show. They always talked on basically every show about how many title defences he was doing and how much of a working champion he was. Mm-hmm. And it probably is the case that, a guy like him was maybe on every house show, whereas potentially Hogan, I would imagine Yokozuna were only on the big shows. I can't imagine Yokozuna was going every night. Could be wrong. But I know Hogan, would do what we refer to as like the A shows. So if you've got a big arena, he'll be there to help sell it out. Yeah. Whereas I think Bret was like working basically every night, every show.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about that Death of the Territories book is exactly what you're saying there. They basically had an A and B squad, and they were sometimes taking. They would take the A squad to basically the bigger markets, mm-hmm. the B squad into some of the smaller towns and like school gyms and stuff like that. I found that really interesting.
Yeah,
so, like compare that to now. If they're doing like a tour of the UK or that, you'd expect them to have all their big stars. But yeah, I found that really interesting. Mm-hmm. Back to the action with Mean Gene again. He's a busy man. He's almost as busy as Gordon Soley was on that that pay-per-view we watched. He's with Bam Bam, and he's fresh as a daisy and very shouty. He's not the best promo in the world.
Nah, another guy that maybe would benefit from a manager. I think he had one at points over the years.
Yeah. See, it sounds like I'm like just hanging off Cornette's nuts, but I think he was in... Was Bam Bam in... I want to say there was something called Camp Cornette, and it had like Yokozuna. Did I have
now this...
Or was it Vader?
This is ringing a bell.
Owen and Bulldog were in it.
Yeah.
I'm maybe mixing Bam Bam up with Vader.
Possibly, yeah, but that's pretty cool actually.
Yeah.
I like that.
So here we are, King of the Ring final match of the night. Bam Bam Bigelow, like we say, fresh as a daisy. He's had 5 minutes against that buffoon Jim Duggan. Bret Hart is limping out to the ring quite visibly.
I was kind of waiting for a Bret promo, but maybe if he's like shouting at Hogan in his locker room, maybe that's why that isn't happening. 'Cause I thought they would do one just before he went out to the ring, but I was quite surprised watching it that there wasn't.
Yeah, that's a good point actually. I never really thought about it, to be honest, but it would have fit, definitely. Mm-hmm. Talking about what this means and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I say, Bret's limping out and he's looking pretty done in.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest with you, I don't have a huge amount of notes about this match because I was just really quite enjoying watching it.
Yeah, it was good. I've got some. I can take you through some of what I've got. Similar to some previous matches, Bam Bam's got the power, Bret's got wrestling and quickness. Bam Bam dominating early on. There's a lot of selling by Bret across this pay-per-view. So I've got Bam Bam's taking some liberties in the way that he throws Bret over the ropes to the floor, kind of launches him. And we've got Bam Bam then with a series of headbutts. And basically we've gone like, you go 5 minutes of the match, Bret hasn't had any offense, is just selling. We've got a big impressive suplex by Bam Bam, and a 2 count from that. There's a point where the brawling kind of breaks out to the floor, and Bret gets, it's almost his first offense in when he reverses Bam Bam, sends him into the guardrail. And then comes off the apron, but Bam Bam catches him and just puts him into the ring post. And I've got in my notes, Bret's offense lasted about 20 seconds. Bam Bam slamming Bret on the floor, and then Luna Vachon running down. She had been aligned. She had been aligned with Bam Bam on quite a few of previous shows.
Yep.
So she runs down the ramps and hits Bret with a chair while Bam Bam is distracting the ref in the ring. I didn't remember this. Like, going into this, I remembered Bret wins King of the Ring. Uh-huh. So this, it's so many years since I've watched this show. Bam Bam with a big slam, goes up to the top rope and hits the flying headbutt. And I'm waiting for the kick out.
Mm-hmm. Same.
And there's no kick out.
Yep. It was really confusing. It's like you expect to see something and you think, I've seen this before and I know what happens, but this isn't what happens.
Yeah.
And you think, Bam Bam Big goes, is that image that I've got in my head of Bret with a sort of daft crown sort of hanging over his head? Is that wrong? Have I made that up in my head?
Was it the next year? What's going on? But then we get another ref running down. I think it's Earl Hebner doing the running.
Yeah,
the running.
It is.
And is it Joey Morella? Is he the ref? Yeah. So he's trying to tell Joey Morella that this chair shot took place, and the refs are having a chat, and then they go over to the Fink. Yeah, I mean, what were your thoughts about this Finkel moment? So
we've spoke about this, and so Fink says the referee has reversed his decision, and Hebner has a fit. He turns round and he's throwing his arms at him, and he's like, as if to go, "No, you idiot!"
Yeah, I mean, I assume this was a fuck up, or was it? Do you think it was the way it was planned?
I don't know. I don't know why it would be planned that way, but I quite like it.
I mean, I like the passion from Earl Hebner.
Brilliant.
So yeah, Fink gets it right in the end. The match is to continue. It's he's not reversed the decision. The match must go on.
So who is it? Heenan on commentary or Savage that keeps harping on about Finkel making the biggest mistake of his life? I think it's maybe Savage.
Yeah, I think it is Savage.
Get past it.
Because Heenan is more focused on how unfair this is. The referee's decision should be final. So we've got from there, Bam Bam is still dominant. Bret looks out on his feet. We've got a bear hug by Bam Bam on Bret, then a backbreaker. But Bret manages to squirm out of the backbreaker to then hit a suplex. And I've got in my notes then, Bam Bam goes for what JR calls a big posterior drop. But Bret manages to get out of the way of that one. Another backbreaker by Bam Bam, but this time Bret nicely counters that into a sleeper. Nice. And we're heading towards the finish sequence that I now remember, and I'm thinking this does happen here. Yeah. I remember it well now. So we've got Bret drop kicking the back of Bam Bam, who's teetering on the ropes. Bret, I've written, I don't know what I mean exactly here, but I've written slingshots himself over the ropes to crossbody Bam Bam, who's out on the floor. Yep. Bret with a second rope flying clothesline for a 2 count. Side Russian leg sweep, and it's all, you know, it's heading towards what you usually associate with a Bret finishing sequence.
Yes.
Which I liked because they kind of tease it. Side Russian leg sweep, top rope flying bulldog on Bam Bam.
Amazing.
It's just executed brilliantly. Bret tries to apply the sharpshooter, as he so often has, but Bam Bam's able to power out of that. Bret goes for a suplex, but Bam Bam counters, lands on Bret. That's for a 2 count. I imagine, you know, for the size of him, given the way Bret's able to perform some power moves on him, Bam Bam for an opponent must be really light on his feet. Mm-hmm. Just given how agile he is, he must make it pretty easy for the opponent, because he just looks such a big guy. Yes. But Bret's able to do some moves that are almost looking like kind of manhandling him, which is, I think, you know, a credit to Bam Bam and how light he's able to make himself.
Yeah.
Bam Bam sends Bret into the corner, charges in. Bret manages to get a kick into Bam Bam's face, which spins him round. And then the finish sequence, which I really like, Bret climbing on Bam Bam's shoulders and executing a victory roll for the pin win.
Tremendous.
Yeah.
Tremendous finish.
Mm-hmm. Good match. Again, Bret had to sell for the first big chunk of it, but that plays into the storyline. He's worn down, Bam Bam's fresh. And in the end, Bret just, outmaneuvers him, out-wrestles him, manages to get the win. Savage was pleased.
Yeah. He was doing a lot of, come on, Hitman.
Yeah. And then he charges into the ring and gives him a big hug. We get, I actually forgot about the way this all ends, but we get Bret taken to this like stage area.
They really rush him. I mean, the guy's just wrestled for about an hour and a half. And they're like, come on, son, out the ring, up to the bit where Mean Gene does the interviews and they crown him.
Yep. So he's going to get his crown, his robe, the scepter, all that. And then, as I say, this took me by surprise. I didn't remember this off the top of my head, but Jerry the King Lawler turns up.
He does, and he basically starts cutting a bit of a heel, like a classic heel promo about there only being one king. And Bret starts getting the crowd chanting Burger King, which I thought was a bit cringe. And then, like, the King just snaps Shamrock style and starts proper assaulting Bret.
Yep.
He hits him with everything, including the throne, which apparently genuinely, according to Bret, genuinely hurt him. He had issues breathing for months after it. After the King threw that on top of him. So, that's what obviously sets up Bret versus Jerry Lawler at SummerSlam.
Yeah, I think at the time, as a youngster, I was a little bit underwhelmed because I didn't have Lawler on that level. I think obviously if you're ever involved in the Memphis territory, he is like the main guy. He was the headliner. He was the top of the card for basically forever.
Huge eye.
But I think from my point of view as a kid, he'd just been that guy who turned up and done some commentary and stuff like that. I just didn't have him at that level. And all they kept telling us that is if you won King of the Ring, you're bound to be in line for a title shot. I felt like it was a little bit of an anticlimax.
Yeah, I know what you mean. That was not the big boss that you expected. If Yokozuna had attacked him, you'd understood. And probably only to a certain group of people in a certain area of America, that would have been massive.
Yeah.
That would have been their Christmases come at once. But yeah, I know what you mean about being a little bit underwhelmed.
So yeah, that was King of the Ring. It
was a really good show for me. I think the nostalgia plays into it. I feel like when you think about this era, it's like just past the sort of golden cartoon era. This feels a bit more colourful. I don't know if that's the right word. It's like or it's almost like transition to the next generation.
Yeah.
This show, especially Hogan going away, and I enjoyed it. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I did. Again, one of those shows that when I'm watching it, I'm kind of having the memories of watching it as a kid, and just really entertaining. Enough good quality wrestling. You've got the perfect match. You've got the Razor Ramon match as well.
It seems so long ago. It seemed like there's a lot of matches on this. Yeah.
You've got, seeing a superstar like Hogan, seeing someone like Yokozuna. There's plenty on the show to, personally, I just found really entertaining. And probably an era I haven't gone back and watched an awful lot of, which was refreshing as well.
So I watched WrestleMania 9 before I watched this. I started watching WrestleMania 9 and I think I fell asleep like the second match in. But
Okay.
I had good intentions to watch WrestleMania 9 before this, but I've watched it that many times I could probably tell you what happens anyway. Sorry, go on.
So I was just going to mention, for Bret, much as I was bemoaning where he goes immediately after this to some extent, the pay-per-view after SummerSlam is Survivor Series. And it's where they were originally, it was supposed to be, it was the Hart family, but it was supposed to be up against Jerry Lawler and a group of his people. But Jerry Lawler could not be on that show when it came about. Well, I believe there were some accusations made against him.
Like he missed payments in Memphis or something like that?
Something, I don't want to say the words.
Okay.
But anyway, I believe he was cleared in the end, I believe.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So they brought in Shawn Michaels, which didn't feel like it. You know, he's a star and he's up and coming at this point, but he didn't have the storyline at the time, so it just felt like a little bit of a plug-in. But what you got from that was the Bret and Owen situation.
Yes. Was it a bunch of nights?
Yeah.
Was that that Survivor Series then?
Yeah, that was that one. So obviously we know where we go with Bret and Owen from then on, which is gold. It's just brilliant. So,
Bruce, though.
Well, if you listen to Bruce. Yeah.
Did you know that victory roll, how he wins that match, takes me straight to how Owen wins that match at WrestleMania 10 when he reverses the victory roll.
Nice. Yeah, like that.
Take a guess what the Meltzer rating was for Perfect v Bret Hart.
Oh, it must have been good. 4.5.
4.25.
Okay, I was close.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there you go. King of the Ring 93 in the bank.
Excellent.
And hopefully one day we'll go back to the Nutter Centre.
And you're going to finish WrestleMania 9?
Of course.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, did you know that that's what apparently they used to call Vince McMahon's office?
The Nutter Centre. Oh dear.
Sorry.
Unfortunately, I said it. And I'm glad I didn't emphasise it in a specific way. Yeah.
So, what you got for me?
Okay. So.
I'm so excited.
What if it's a letdown? Okay. So, I was just looking through Twitter, as I quite often do. And there was something popped up saying...
wasn't one of JR's likes, was it? Some questionable likes on Twitter.
So it wasn't, no. It was one of those, on this day, 26 years ago.
Oh.
Right, so I'll tell you where I'm going.
1996?
I am going
8.
to
Sharp Bros.
96.
96?
Yep.
Yes.
I am going to Bash at the Beach, 1996. And I don't know if that will immediately make you think of why I'm going there.
Is Bash at the Beach 96, but whose side is he on?
Yes, it is.
Nice.
So we have the outsiders have come into WCW, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, and they're kind of threatening their takeover, and they are going to have a 6-man tag against any 3 men WCW want to put forward, but they will not reveal who their 3rd man is. Can't imagine there'd be anyone listening to this who doesn't know what's going to happen here. However, one of probably the most significant moments in wrestling history is going to take place.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's definitely a show I've seen. It's not a show I've seen multiple times, but I thought it'd be fun to go back and have a watch through.
Yeah, I like it. That sounds fun. Do you want me to run through the card?
Go for it.
Okay, I don't know. I don't think there's any dark matches here. So, Psychosis versus Rey Mysterio.
Nice.
A Carson City silver dollar match.
What the hell is that?
John Tenta versus Big Bubba.
Wow.
Hopefully, this isn't his and he was like a shark phase earthquake. WCW. We've got a Lord of the Ring taped fist match. This is unbelievable. Vince Russo isn't even here yet. They've got some gimmick matches. DD. Oh, for fuck's sake! DDP
Oh, no, what
versus
have I done?
Jim Duggan.
Oh, fuck, I'm sorry.
God damn it!
Maybe he's better 3 years on from what we just watched.
Oh, a double dog collar chain.
Why are
tag
none
team
of them
match.
just matches?
The Nasty Boys versus Public Enemy?
Okay.
Johnny Grunge and Rocco Rock. Oh, Jesus. Disco Inferno versus Dean Malenko for the Cruiserweight title. Disco Inferno wasn't a Cruiserweight, was it?
I may have made a mistake. Yeah.
Mongo McMichael
Oh, God.
versus Joe Gomez. Doesn't he play for Liverpool?
Who the hell is Joe Gomez?
Steve McMichael with Deborah McMichael, is that?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Tremendous. United. Wow, this is so odd. United States heavyweight title Conan versus Ric Flair
Oh, wow.
with Miss Elizabeth and Woman.
That's not a pairing you would naturally put together. I'm quite intrigued by that, actually.
Kevin Sullivan and the Giant versus the Four Horsemen, Arn Anderson and Chris Benoit.
Okay.
And then your main event.
Okay. I'm going to call it a mixed bag, but obviously I imagine this is going to be one of these pay-per-views where they're talking about the third man the entire way through the undercard.
Heenan again, aye.
Yeah.
Schiavone, Heenan, and a little bit of American Dream, baby. Yes.
Oh, nice.
Lex,
Okay.
Randy, and Sting versus the Outsiders plus one other.
So yeah, it's. Have you gone back and watched this at any point in recent
Definitely
times? No. Okay. Good. I'm glad. I think I watched this when I first got the network.
Right.
Because I'd heard about it, but I'd never actually seen it. And it was one of those, not had access to it before, never seen it to buy or anything. So I'll just make it one of my first watches when the network came out. So I don't know when that would have been when I first got the network. 5 years, maybe longer. Longer than that. 6 or 7 years, maybe. And that's the only time I've watched it.
Super. Aye. I don't think I've ever watched it. I've obviously seen the end and all that sort of stuff, but yeah, be interesting. Be good.
So I'm very much going for storyline here rather than match quality, I think, but it should still be good.
It'd be interesting. Nice one. Great pick. I was intrigued when I couldn't help myself but ask what decade. You said 90s, and I said WWF, and you said no, and I was like, where's he going?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, we shall talk about that in 2 weeks then. Looking forward to that. You're looking at the New World Organisation of Wrestling, brother. Is that what he says?
Yeah, he fucks it up a little bit.
Fucking, come on, Terry. Stop hanging about with Bubba the Love Sponge and just get your lines right. What an awful name, eh?
Oh, it's terrible. And for some reason, it creates like images.
It does. It's like Jimmy Five Bellies versus Bubba the Love Sponge at WrestleMania. I might have to go and do that on WWE 2K.
Please, if you create Bubba the Love Sponge, do not send me whatever that looks like. I just...
Fucking disgusting. Right, if you... do you know what I was thinking? If there's anybody that actually listens to this thing, if you want to suggest any pay-per-views that you'd like us to watch, please feel free to let us know. You can message us on Instagram at Outlaws Pod. Do that, because it'd be good to get some other suggestions. Sometimes I get too excited and decide the night before I've decided exactly what I'm going to pick. I then change my mind because I've watched something. So, yeah, give us a shout. Okay, Adam, until next time, couple of weeks. Take it easy, pal. Hope you feel better in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.